Thank you so much. Yeah, so I am going to go ahead and start reading. I'm reading from NLT. There's more than one version, of course, but this is NLT. Jesus returned to the Mount of Olives, but early the next morning he was back again at the temple. A crowd soon gathered, and he sat down and taught them. As he was speaking, the teachers of religious law and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery. They put her in front of the crowd. Teacher, they said to Jesus, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say? Verse 6. They were trying to trap him into saying something that they could use against him. But Jesus stooped down and he wrote in the dust with his finger. They kept demanding an answer, so he stood up again and said, all right, but let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone. Then he stooped down and wrote in the dust. When the accusers heard this, they slipped away one by one, beginning with the oldest, until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. Then Jesus stood up again and said to the woman, where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you? No, Lord, she said. And Jesus said, neither do I. Go and sin no more. So I love that whole "go and sin no more." I think it's really it's really a catchy thing that we've used a lot. But I want us to think about how the woman felt. Oh, you are so welcome, Merritt. You're so welcome. Um, how the woman felt when she was brought in front of Jesus. Now, she is actually being used as a bait in this story. So the Pharisees, if people are not familiar with the Pharisees were a group of religious leaders in the Old Testament. They were very, very into the law, and they were very into hypocrisy. But Jesus called them out and they disliked him, possibly hated him for it, because they kept plotting to kill him in different ways. They kept plotting to um, take him out. I don't know if Clubhouse has, one of those things where you can't say certain words, but if that is the case, they were plotting to unalive him in one way or the other. So let me use the politically correct word. And they loved to look righteous without actually being righteous. That was the thing about the Pharisees. They loved to look like they were very prayerful, like they were obeying the law, but they were always finding ways around the law. And I want us to, when we think of mental health, I want us to think about how this woman felt in this situation. Because I'm thinking, oh, this woman was brought out by herself because she did not commit this act by herself. So now she was brought before Jesus. She was a pawn. I'm not sure that she knew she was a pawn in their scheme, but they really just wanted to trap him, as verse 6 says. I had some words that I thought of when I was looking through this passage. I felt like she probably felt a lot of shame, guilt, isolation. I felt that she probably thought she was singled out. She was unheard, afraid, and broken. And because of this, I thought, I'm sure these are common emotions, even if it's not related to adultery. At some point, people feel singled out. At some point, most people have been accused of something. Now, this woman did commit adultery, but she was singled out because the man was not present. It was just her. And then she sees this teacher who she probably didn't know which way he would lean. Because she just knows, okay, this is a man that gathers crowds. Some people say he performs miracles. And possibly, it's even possible at this time that she might not have known who Jesus was. Because there's nothing in the passage that says that she was very much aware of who he was. So this teacher that they brought her in front of started writing. And everyone's watching him and he's writing on the floor. And they're like, what's going on? Looking around. And he's just writing on the floor. Then he stands up and says, oh, hey, whichever one of you has no sin, go ahead and throw the first stone. And continues what he was doing. Little by little, from the oldest to the youngest, they all walk away. The Pharisees are usually very eloquent, but at this point, they have nothing to say, which is interesting because they're the sort of people who usually have something to say. They're the sort of people who usually are, the people who are never lost for words, even when those words that they're speaking are not really helpful. So it's interesting that they have nothing to say. I have heard different people say different things about what he was writing. Some people said it's possible that he was writing names or stuff that reminded them of things that they had done, and they couldn't, they couldn't step up to that. And they were like, well, you know, I guess we're outnumbered or we're outwitted. But I don't really know that it matters what he was writing. I think there was something about the way he addressed it and just the presence of God within Jesus that called them out and said, hey, you have double standards. Now, I'm going to read another verse that tells us what the law actually said, and that is Leviticus 20, verse 10. If a man commits adultery, hold on, I had that. If a man commits adultery with his neighbor's wife, both the man and the woman who have committed adultery would be put away. I'm gonna use the word that Clubhouse will not ding me for, but they must be put away. That is like unalived, and they would be stoned. So the law actually does not single out the woman. The law allows for both the woman and the man to be punished. So the question is, why did the Pharisees bring only the woman? Is it possible that she was with a Pharisee? Is it possible that she was with a man that they wanted to protect? Or is it possible that, that they just disregarded her because she was a woman? Interestingly enough, there are laws in the Bible that actually protected women in those times because the culture itself was not one that protected women. So the Bible provided laws that would protect women. And in this situation, Jesus was acting in the spirit of those laws. Because when you look at the fact that the law itself says that the man and the woman would be stoned, but when the Pharisees quoted it, they said the law demanded that she would be stoned. So her alone, she is singled out. And the woman in amazement, when all these people and all her accusers walk away, Jesus asks her, where are your accusers? And she says, oh, they're not here. I'm sure she was confused, like, what's going on? And I'm thinking, she probably felt shock before she felt relief. Because it's almost like, when a kid is caught and they're expecting punishment for something and they're like, oh no, I know it's coming. I know it's coming. And all of a sudden, nothing happens. And they're like, wait, what just happened? But this is extreme because she's expecting that she would be giving the ultimate punishment, stoning, and in a horrible way her life would end. But instead, she's acquitted. Instead, there's this teacher who she probably doesn't know who has written something on the floor, and all of a sudden she is shown mercy. So she goes from the emotions of feeling broken, singled out, alone, feeling accused, feeling guilty, feeling shame, and wondering, why is the man not here? To now she's going, oh, wait a minute. This is too good to be true. I definitely have some kind of relief here. Peace mixed with confusion is what I'm thinking. but a whole lot of relief and hope. Hope. She's able to walk out from that situation where she felt accused and alone with hope. I had thoughts about this passage, and I've listed out my thoughts, but I'm going to list out the main 2 points, and then I'll have us come up and share how it applies to us and what we think about this passage. But one of the things that came up for me, I think there's a big theme going throughout the passage with double standards. The double standards being the Pharisees not being able to see their own sin, not being able to see this woman through the eyes of mercy at all, and seeing her as a pawn. So to them, she's a tool. She's not looked upon with dignity. She's looked upon as somebody that they can use to trap Jesus, and they're hoping that her life ends with this trap. On the other hand, you see Jesus, who looks at this woman through the eyes of mercy. And to him, being a woman does not make her someone that just can be used as a pawn or easily discarded. He writes down something in the sand that makes these people think, oh, we need to walk away. So he treats her with dignity, and he says to her, go and sin no more. So there is something about the way that Jesus approached her that showed dignity. And then something about the way the Pharisees that approached her that showed disdain, a lack of dignity, the usury that they had in their heads about her as a person, and just plain double standards and hypocrisy. So that was the contrast I thought of that I would love for us to discuss. Another